When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
Membership means more with American Express Business Gold. Earn 4 times membership rewards points in your top 2 eligible spending categories every month, including eligible U.S. advertising purchases and select media, and U.S. purchases at restaurants, including takeout and delivery. What are you waiting for? Get the card that flexes with your spending every month. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
Hi again, folks. Thanks for being here. It's Gareth Mitchell with the Somewhere on Earth podcast. It's Tuesday, the 25th of February, 2025. And with us today is Ghislaine Boddington, joining us on the Somewhere on Earth podcast from the Evergreen Podcast Network. Are you feeling evergreen today?
Very evergreen, yes. It is cold February day in central London. It's so cold, isn't it?
Oh, it certainly is.
It's meant to get warmer by the end of the week, and I think we'll see a lot more of the green shoots coming up. Snowdrops are out, but
yes, there is that.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So and some of the evergreen foliage is green, but the rest of it still could do with a little bit of greening up. We'll get there. Good stuff. Nice to see you again, Ghislaine. Let's jump in. And coming up today, we're taking a big old look at education and how machine learning is shaping it and, yes, even disrupting it. And I'm so sorry, I don't really like the word disrupt, but it kind of slipped in there. Anyway, the point being that AI is shaking things up for educators and learners alike. School students are using LLM tools for schoolwork, and Ghislaine and I, we work at universities, and we often think quite hard about what AI chatbots are all about and really what they mean for the way that we teach our students and the way that our students learn. So what are the opportunities? What are the risks? Education and AI. Yes, that's on today's syllabus with some top guests right here on the Somewhere on Earth podcast. Over 70% of students in a United States survey use AI for schoolwork, despite their schools restricting the likes of ChatGPT. Now, that's according to a study from the Harker School, Carnegie Mellon University, and the University of California, Santa Barbara. Now, this study appeared recently on an academic preprint platform, and it was then picked up by New Scientist, so it kind of gained quite a lot of traction once it ended up in New Scientist. And the numbers suggest that school students use these LLMs more than young adults, showing that the younger users really seem to be adapting to the AI more readily, possibly, not surprisingly. The students said they found the tools useful for assignments despite concerns about accuracy, especially with LLMs, as I'm sure we all know, they have this tendency to hallucinate. So in other words, why just make stuff up in your essay on your own when you can get a chatbot to make stuff up for you? That's the problem with hallucinating. But of course you can get some sense out of these LLMs too. Or can you? Let's discuss. To do that, we are joined by Mutlu Cukurova, Professor of Learning and Artificial Intelligence at University College London. Welcome to Somewhere on Earth, Mutlu. How are you doing?
Thanks, Gareth. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Good to have you. So let's just start on this whole idea of how AIs, they seem so promising in theory, don't they? And we know that they do a lot of really useful things for us. But when it comes to education, they don't necessarily deliver so well in practice. Would you say that sums up your view on this?
Well, that depends on how do we evaluate them, right? I think it is quite clear if you look at the literature on AI in education Not necessarily within the last few years on generative AI, but broadly using machine learning techniques to be able to provide personalized adaptive learning through intelligent tutoring systems. Actually, the evidence is quite strong with regards to their potential to deliver content acquisition and knowledge acquisition on particular topics that they are used to be taught to students. But of course, education is much broader than learning, and learning is much broader than content acquisition. So if we are thinking about learning outcomes that are particularly associated with those very difficult social, emotional competency development, if we look at outcomes on students' well-being, then the evidence is quite weak. But if you are interested in delivering content on particular subject areas, specifically in areas that are relatively easy to build a domain model like physics, mathematics, lots of STEM subjects, then the evidence is quite strong about the potential of AI to teach our students. So it depends, how do we evaluate them?
Of course, there we are. And I was just thinking that's the next thing, isn't it? So how do we evaluate? You need some kind of framework, presumably. You mentioned student welfare, for instance. I mean, is this purely about their assessment, the students' assessment results? Do you evaluate them that way? Do you evaluate, do you give, can we even do control groups here, where you give one group of students for a given assignment, say some assistance from an LLM, and another control group that doesn't have it, and then just look at how the grades vary? Just in a pilot. I'm not saying do it in a final exam and potentially screw up half your cohort's future, but hopefully you know what I mean. Just talk us through a little bit about how you might evaluate.
Sure. There are at least two dimensions of evaluation, right? One dimension is specifically looking at what we are calling the output evaluation. So does AI actually behave in the way that you would expect it to behave based on its training? Is it providing right-on-time support? Is the provided output accurate enough? Is it providing difficulty adjustments accordingly? So does AI do the things that you trained it to do? Is the output evaluation. But more interestingly, of course, the evaluations that are focusing on outcome evaluations, which is when students are interacting with these AI systems, are they actually improving their learning? And in these kind of evaluations, you could be looking at anything from a relatively structured recall and recognition evaluation of learning gains. So these would be recall tests would be open-ended questions, and then the recognition tests would be some kind of multiple choice evaluations. And then you would create a randomized control trial. You would create certain schools, certain groups of students who are interacting with these AI tools as your experimental group, an equivalent group who can be comparable in terms of their prior knowledge to the experimental group, as a control group which does not really interact with AI but continues what we are calling as business as usual, or it can be a particular human instruction strategy as a comparison baseline. And then you would compare the learning outcomes in these experimental versus control groups.
Yeah, okay. Also, so my question wasn't a million miles off, actually, then, so you can have experimental and control groups to evaluate AIs. So, Ghislaine, as I mentioned, both of us happen to work at universities ourselves, as of course does Mutlu himself over at UCL. So what are you finding in all this as this technology comes in and seems to come in all of a sudden, really, for many of us?
I think across education as a whole, and particularly universities, globally, there's been actually quite a really interesting debate happening about how to deal with this with our students. In many ways, my position is that there's no question students today, but even more so in 5 years, 10 years, will be working and co-creating or companioning with LLMs, yeah, and hopefully, as you know, my work's on digital human twins, will be their own LLM, and they actually may well be working and learning with them from very young through, and they enter university with that agent with them. But looking at that beyond at the moment, what we're seeing, of course, is students jumping to use the tools that are available straight away. Not really, I think, being that mistrustful of them as students. I think the staff are much more so, yeah. But also very cleverly, academics worldwide creating new ways to integrate, say, ChatGPT into modules so that actually, yes, you can use it, but that has to be just one source. You've got to acknowledge that source. And then I want to see what you've done from that to actually add on other sources, to debate it, to come up with some original thinking, which actually will be part of a process towards your final output, yeah.
And on the MSc course that I work on, we actually do quite early on in the course give the students an assignment where we say, please use an LLM to write this assignment, and then write a companion piece without the LLM, reflecting on what happened on the use of the LLM, and we do that early on in the course. So we're getting that out, kind of out in the open, first of all. And I just want to put something to you, Mutlu, that, I was educated in the 1980s. That's when I went to school a long time ago. And I remember the discussions then about whether we could use calculators in exams or calculators at all.
Yes, it's a really good comparison, actually.
In those days, no, you've got to stick with the slide rule and the log tables. That's proper mathematics. And of course, now you wouldn't have those discussions. And I think what I want to put to you, Mutlu, is it kind of a similar discussion now that people saying, we can't have these LLMs, they're a bit like the people in the 1980s who said, we can't have these calculators?
Well, that's a really interesting question. Thanks for posing this.
Or is it different this time? Yeah.
Well, it's quite interesting because there are some overlapping aspects, but there are also significant differences in my opinion. So the overlapping aspects, I guess, are associated with the fact that we do want people to develop particular core competencies after their interaction with AI in a way that when AI is not there anymore, they can still complete the task. For instance, we don't want a student to write a fantastic essay only with the help of an AI tool if when the AI tool is not available, overall competence of the student is declining after their interaction with AI. So there is this idea of using a tool like calculators in your example or AI, either as an opportunity to automate a particular task and replace your own competence with AI versus using it as part of your, what we are calling the extended cognition, so that you can actually do improvements on your own competence, but also achieve problem solving or complete tasks that you would not be able to do otherwise. So this idea of using tools, calculators or AI or any kind of educational technology as part of a student's extended cognition to make them more intelligent after their interaction should be the goal. And I think it is the same with calculators versus AI. Where things get quite complicated is that when you start thinking about the differences between a calculator, which is a deterministic tool in the sense that if you are using the same input, it would always give you the same output because it has built-in rule-based models in the calculator, versus a stochastic-based model, which is the current state of the field in AI, where the same kind of input might not really lead to the same output. That makes the comparison between calculator and AI quite tricky, because with a calculator, you can always trust its output. With an AI, you cannot always trust its output.
Yeah. So I get it. Yeah, a calculator doesn't hallucinate. We hope it doesn't.
Exactly.
So what about that point there, Ghislaine, about, that in some contexts, if you're talking about an AI used effectively as a co-pilot in education, I suppose the sum total of the AI input and the student input is, it's complementary. They work well together. That must be a case for using it. And, after all, these are people who are going to go out into the world and will have access to these tools more and more as they go through their careers.
Yes, I think it is important to, in a way, it's about learning how to co-pilot. Yeah, and how to do that with intelligence, with enabling yourself to get back the different kinds of things you want. It's the prompting, the again and again and again to go deeper. It's the how do you get to the co-pilot AI to work with you towards maybe an original output. Yes. So, and I think we still got a long way to see how that can happen. Whether that can happen, whether in 10 years, in 20 years' time, we're all just totally normal with that. Yeah, that actually we'll look back on this patch and think, gosh, they were very babyish the way they were prompting AI then, weren't they? You know, what a laugh. Look what they used to write into the chat boxes. Yeah.
There you go. And the prompting, the AI prompting, of course, is a whole skill in itself, isn't it? And maybe a final word from you here about preparing students for the future. And a big part, presumably, that we can help them with at universities is getting the prompts right, you know, understanding the algorithms well enough to know how to play them, as it were, to get the best outcomes. So final thought for you on that.
This prompt engineering question is actually quite interesting because the usual argument there is that we should educate our students in a way that they would be able to do this prompt engineering in a structured and systematic way. The problem in this argument is that if we know systematically and in a structured way how to teach how to prompt, then you can actually model computationally this systematic structure into the AI models. So what is happening in recent state of the field in AI is that many of the most recent models, what are called as reasoning models, actually have embedded prompting strategies in them. So it's quite a tricky situation about whether we should be teaching prompt engineering or how to prompt effectively to our students, because as long as we know how to do this very well, we are kind of solving the problem in AI and embed this into AI, and the new models do not necessarily require this kind of prompt input. And I find it really fascinating because you started the discussion by highlighting some of these survey figures on the use cases, but these are really problematic figures, particularly from the educator's point of view, in the sense that most surveys would tell you about 50 to 70% variance in the teacher's use, but relying upon a self-declared acknowledgement of use for teachers in our current ecosystem where the use of AI is considered as a threat to teaching profession is really problematic. There is a very interesting study recently published by Anthropic AI. And this company actually looks at 4 million discourses in their platform. So 4 million people's interaction with AI, and they try to make sense on how do people use AI. And it's fascinating because their research indicates only 4% of the professions are using AI, over 75% of their time as their professional tasks. And one of these professions is actually teachers. Foreign language teachers are within this 4% of the population who use AI more than 75% of their professional tasks. This is really, really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that, we'll leave it. More, by the way, in the subscription version of this podcast. But for now, for this version, Mutlu Cukurova, thanks for joining us. Professor of Learning and Artificial Intelligence at University College London.
This episode is brought to you by Nerds Gummy Clusters, the sweet treat that always elevates the vibe. With a sweet gummy surrounded with tangy, crunchy nerds, every bite of Nerds Gummy Clusters brings you a whole new world of flavor. Whether it's game night, on the way to a concert, or kicking back with your crew, unleash your senses with Nerds Gummy Clusters.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day, and that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Well, we have been treating you, dear listeners, to some tech for good from the Consumer Electronics Show over the last few weeks. This week is no different, and staying right on topic, here's something, I think it's fair to say, educational related for you.
It's Jez Donaldson again with the next in my series of interviews with visionary leaders from CES 2025. Providing training to groups of people in remote locations without internet access is a challenge, often requiring those groups to travel long distances and stay overnight at centralized training centers. This can be expensive and time-consuming. BeeKee is a Swiss firm that's created a tiny standalone interactive learning system that can provide multimedia learning materials to a classroom without any internet access. This has proven invaluable to schools in countries where internet access is banned by law, and also to NGOs operating in remote locations in Africa and elsewhere. All the students require is a laptop or a tablet with Wi-Fi.
Hello, I'm Jacques Veu. I'm the CEO, CFO, and co-founder of BeeKee. BeeKee has invented the BeeKee Box, which enables our clients to deploy digital classrooms, a bit like at university, wherever they want without any internet or power.
Tell us about the original vision behind the product and what problem it's aiming to solve.
One of the two co-founders, Vincent, he was teaching biology at Middle High School in Geneva, and biology is quite experiential. So in fact, he wanted the students to be able to share pictures and comments during class. He went to the school leadership and asked them whether he could put his students on Wi-Fi. It turns out that apparently in Geneva, the law prohibits that, which I can understand. So he invented the first version of the BeeKee Box, which was just a device to allow people to go onto a Wi-Fi without going onto the internet in a class. But then, as he was studying at university, and together with his mate, Sergio, who became co-founder, they came across people who were more, let's say, who were busy with humanitarian pursuits, who recommended to them to come to a certain conference. They went to the conference, and they actually met with quite some interest. They had a very small booth, and specifically, there was a Nepalese person, man who really was very interested and said that after the earthquake 6 years earlier, he really needed a solution, and that this BeeKee Box was exactly the solution he was looking for. So he really insisted on buying one of the prototypes. They said, no, it's a prototype, don't do that. We can't sell it. And he insisted so much, he said, no, you haven't understood. This solved my problem. My plane leaves tomorrow. Please sell it to me. So I sold the first BeeKee Box well before they founded the company like that. And then they looked at each other and said, what's the call again? A startup? Let's do that.
It's a very striking, tiny device. Could you just describe it for listeners?
Yes. So imagine a can of Coca-Cola. We're not sponsored, but still, a can of soda, let's say. Make it hexagonal and make it very yellow. It has a black button on top. That's basically how it looks. It weighs a little bit less than a can of soda. It weighs 255 grams.
And can you explain a couple of typical use cases?
The biggest use case currently is our clients using them to teach refugees in refugee camps. And they teach them various things such as English or woodwork to earn a bit of money, or how to mediate so as to live in peace after the politicians have concluded a peace in a country. How do you go on with life not hating your neighbor? Then other use cases include employee onboarding for NGOs. We've done that with the International Committee of the Red Cross, or health workers, continuous education. We've done that with Doctors Without Borders, for instance. And we are going very, very likely to implement also a solution for the University of Kinshasa's medicine department to teach young future doctors something about certain patient cases.
Your customers include a number of universities and aid organizations. Do you retail directly to smaller organizations?
Yes, so our very smallest organizations would buy one box and do one small project with us. So, for instance, I can mention Afghan Women's Support. we did a small project with them to start with. And even for a small NGO, actually, it makes a lot of sense because it can reduce tremendously the cost of giving digital learning to your learners.
How affordable is it for customers in developing countries? Can you give an idea of a typical installation?
The hardware itself starts at around $700. And in pure theory, you can actually just buy one and start with that. Very often what happens is that we deploy a project together with our customer, coordinating with them, which includes a bit of implementation. And quite often also we help our customers because half of us have a master or a PhD in education technology. We take their courses, which are maybe PowerPoint based, and make them more compatible with a better outcome in blended learning. So in fact, we cut them into smaller pieces, add quizzes, maybe some animations, maybe some localization. Overall, projects might start at a few thousand francs, that's a few £1,000, dollars. Even though it may sound like a lot for a small NGO, all the NGOs we serve like this, they start out with tremendous, with very high connection costs. Or transport costs. And they reduce these costs so much that they have a very, very fast payback when they come to us and we do a project together.
All right, that's Jacques Bou talking to our reporter Jez Donaldson. And it seems like a pretty neat idea. I've heard similar things before in that you take a load of educational resources when the teacher is in the classroom before they go out into the field, where they have internet access. They can then upload and store lots of documents and resources onto the BeeKee box and then take it out into the field where other people then can tune in to or connect to the Wi-Fi network that the box itself creates. That's my understanding of it. So, pretty neat stuff.
It is, isn't it? So the box itself actually, when it's in the field, whatever it is, at refugee camps or with students that are in remote places, etc., actually, as soon as they've got their laptops or phones, it kind of creates a network between them to be able to take the content that's needed for them off the box.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a kind of hub on the spot kind of thing.
Hub on the spot, that's good.
I don't know if they would call it that, but that's the idea. Which makes me think, obviously, Ghislaine, that it could be used for many other purposes. I mean, education, of course, and training courses spring to mind. But any case, maybe in the aftermath of some kind of natural disaster, for instance, where you need to get various resources. They could be, health education resources or instructions on how to build certain infrastructure or shelters, for instance, where perhaps you've got a team of aid workers who just need a quick, 3-point plan about how to put up a shelter and they need to access it on their device. Perhaps something a bit like a BeeKee box could provide that kind of thing. And that kind of
it's funny. I actually was thinking the same. And, even when you say, recovering from a disaster, like a plan for building, that actually this whole area needs to be rebuilt and we're going to do it in these stages. And actually everyone can have access to that and work together without the Wi-Fi and internet being up again. And it reminded me of that partly because of the mobility of it to reach remote locations, like the drones that are sent up to actually enable people to get on their smartphones again, to give them satellite access or Wi-Fi access over flood areas when they send up. We covered this once at flood areas. So a drone goes up and it suddenly means that, 1,000 people can actually retether their phones to that connection and can finally get information and text their friends and family and tell them they're okay, etc.
Like an aerial mobile phone base station, effectively. So
it's out in the wild, really, in the wild. But I like it very much that it can be so personalised to a particular needs, like doctors or aid workers, or because there is such specific things that people do need to take out there, like for health instructions for remote villages or refugee camps, etc. It's really positive, very positive work,
Indeed, and the team's developed its own software based on open source technologies as well. So, people can then, any of the users can get into the code on the box, as it were, and then reconfigure the box and program it in their own way. And, of course, share the way they've done it through the open source community.
Wonderful. Yeah, we need more like this, and that's definitely using tech for good and around the education side. Yeah.
And a bit of connectivity where there is no connectivity.
Yes,
if you know what I mean. Okay, Ghislaine, thank you so much. There we are,
Thank you,
folks.
Gareth. Yeah.
It's been a nice couple of weeks working with you again, Ghislaine. And we've heard earlier, of course, from Mutlu Cukurova, more from him in the subscription extra. And if you want to access that, it's dead easy. And it only costs you $10 a month to help us keep the lights on. We appreciate it very much. All right, our production manager is Liz Toohey. The editor, producer and general boss is Anya Lifterovich. You've been hearing from Ghislaine Boddington. And the audio is by Dylan Burton here at Lanson's Team Parner in lovely London. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. It's Michael Calore, Director of Consumer Tech and Culture at Wired, here with my colleagues, senior writer Lauren Good.
Hello.
And Wired contributor Zoe Schiffer.
Hey, everyone.
We're here to tell you about our new podcast, Uncanny Valley, a show about the people, power, and influence of Silicon Valley.
Every week, we get together to talk about how technology and culture from the Valley is influencing our everyday lives.
We dig into questions like, will we ever get our privacy back? Is OpenAI for real? And how are Silicon Valley billionaires impacting U.S. elections?
The first episode of Uncanny Valley comes out on October 31st. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.